Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the star map. The blue lights showed the 12 star systems that belonged to the Corvan Empire. Red dots marked the places where enemy fleets might hide, but there was one area that had no marks at all. It was colored black, and no ship had been there for 300 years. The black area was called the Terran Zone. Old records said it held a dead star system where a species called humans had lived. The stories told that these humans had destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons long ago. Now only radiation and empty planets remained. Morrison had heard these stories since he was young. Every alien species in the galaxy knew about the Terran Zone. They all agreed to stay away from it. The Galactic Council had made it a law. No ship could enter that space for any reason. But Morrison was not like other admirals. He had fought in 20 battles and won them all. He had studied war for 40 years. And he had learned to question things that did not make sense. The Terran Zone did not make sense. Morrison walked to his science officer. "Dr. Kevin Walsh," he said, "show me the data from the border sensors." Dr. Walsh was a thin alien with 6 arms and large eyes. He worked with computers better than anyone in the fleet. His fingers moved quickly over the control panel. "The sensors show energy readings from inside the zone," Dr. Walsh said. "The energy is very strong, too strong for a dead system." Morrison nodded. He had seen this data many times. The energy readings had been growing stronger each year. Something was alive in the Terran Zone. Something that used a lot of power. "What kind of energy?" Morrison asked. "Unknown," Dr. Walsh replied. "It does not match any power source we know. The patterns are very strange." Captain Lisa Parker joined them at the science station. She was Morrison's best ship commander. Her blue skin marked her as a Corvan noble, but she had earned her rank through skill, not birth. "Admiral," she said, "the Imperial Council is asking for your report. They want to know if you still plan to request permission for a scouting mission." Morrison smiled. The Imperial Council was made up of old aliens who feared taking risks. They followed the old rules without thinking. But Morrison had convinced them to listen to his idea. "Tell them yes," Morrison said. "The Empire needs to know what is in that zone. If something dangerous lives there, we should find out before it finds us." Dr. Walsh looked worried. "Admiral, the old warnings are very clear. Every species that has tried to enter the Terran Zone has disappeared. The Krellian Empire sent a fleet there 200 years ago. They never came back." "The Krellians were weak," Morrison said. "They had old ships and poor tactics. We are not the Krellians." Morrison walked back to his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations. They were the best soldiers in the Corvan Empire. Their ship, the Dominator, was the most powerful warship ever built by their people. But Morrison wanted more than one ship for this mission. He would need a full battle group. "Captain Parker," he said, "how many ships can we gather in 1 week?" Parker checked her data pad. 3 heavy cruisers and 1 science vessel. That would give us about 2,000 crew members. "Good. Make it happen." Morrison looked at the star map again. The Terran Zone seemed to call to him. For 300 years, the galaxy had been afraid of empty space. It was time to learn the truth. 3 days later, a message came from the Imperial Council. They had voted to approve Morrison's mission. The vote was close, but they agreed that the Empire needed to investigate the strange energy readings. Morrison gathered his captains in the briefing room. Besides Captain Parker, there was Captain Ron Hayes of the Crusher, Captain Matt Long of the Destroyer, and Captain Nina Green of the science ship Explorer. "Our mission is simple," Morrison told them. "We will enter the Terran Zone and find out what is making those energy readings. We will take pictures, gather data, and return home. If we find any threats, we will destroy them." Captain Hayes raised his hand. "Admiral, what if the old stories are true? What if something terrible waits for us there?" Morrison stood up. "Then we will face it like Corvan warriors. The Empire has ruled this part of the galaxy for 800 years. We did not become strong by running from shadows." The other captains nodded. They trusted Morrison. He had never led them into a battle they could not win. Dr. Walsh spoke up. Admiral, I have been studying the old records about humans. They were a young species. They had only just learned to travel between stars when they destroyed themselves. Their technology was very basic. What kind of weapons did they have? Captain Parker asked. Nuclear bombs and simple energy weapons, Dr. Walsh replied. Nothing that could threaten a modern warship. Morrison felt confident. Even if some humans had survived their nuclear war, they would be no match for Corvan technology. The Empire had weapons that could destroy entire planets. Their shields could stop any attack from primitive enemies. We leave tomorrow, Morrison announced. Prepare your ships and your crews. We are going to solve a 300-year-old mystery. As the captains left the briefing room, Morrison stayed behind. He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere, out there in the darkness of the Terran zone, answers waited. He would find them no matter what stood in his way. The Corvan Empire would finally learn the truth about the forbidden space, and Morrison would be the one to bring that truth home. The 4 Corvan ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Terran zone. Admiral Morrison looked at the main screen and saw nothing but empty space and distant stars. The system looked dead, just like the old record said, but Dr. Walsh was already busy at his science station. His 6 arms moved over the controls as data flowed across his screens. Admiral, Dr. Walsh said, his voice full of surprise, I am getting very strong readings from the inner system. There are many large objects orbiting the 3rd planet. Morrison frowned. What kind of objects? I am not sure, Dr. Walsh replied. They are too far away to see clearly, but they are very big. Some of them are as large as our biggest space stations. Captain Parker stood next to Morrison's chair. Could they be natural formations, asteroids, or broken moons? No, Dr. Walsh said. These objects are moving in perfect patterns. They are definitely artificial. Morrison felt a cold fear in his stomach, but he pushed it away. He was a Corvan admiral. He did not fear the unknown. Take us closer, he ordered. I want to see what we are dealing with. The 4 ships moved deeper into the solar system. As they traveled, Dr. Walsh's readings became more detailed and more frightening. Admiral, Dr. Walsh said, the 3rd planet is not dead. It is covered with cities, millions of them, and there are structures in space around it. Huge structures. Morrison stared at the main screen. He could see the planet now, and it was not the radioactive wasteland he had expected. The planet glowed with lights. Rivers of bright energy flowed across its surface in perfect geometric patterns. How many life forms? Morrison asked. Dr. Walsh worked frantically at his controls. The numbers are too high. My computers cannot count them all. There must be billions of beings living on that planet. Captain Parker looked pale. Admiral, we should send a message to the Imperial Council. They need to know about this. But before Morrison could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Jack Stone, called out from his station. Admiral, unknown ships are approaching. They just appeared on our sensors. Morrison spun around. Appeared? What do you mean appeared? They were not there 1 second ago, Lieutenant Stone said. Now there are 12 ships surrounding us. I do not understand how they got so close without being detected. On the main screen, Morrison could see the approaching ships. They were sleek and dark, unlike any design he had ever seen. They moved with impossible grace, turning and accelerating in ways that should have crushed their crews. Weapon status? Morrison asked. All weapons ready, Lieutenant Stone replied. But Admiral, I cannot get a target lock on any of the enemy ships. Our computers say they are not there. Morrison's hands gripped his chair. In 40 years of military service, he had never faced an enemy with better technology than his own. A voice came over the communication system. It spoke perfect Corvan with no accent or hesitation. Corvan vessels, this is Captain Ben Richards of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered forbidden space. You will turn around and leave immediately. Morrison stood up. He was not going to be ordered around by aliens in unknown ships. This is Admiral Morrison of the Corvan Imperial Fleet, he replied. I demand to know who you are and what authority you have in this system. There was a pause. Then the voice came back, colder than before. "We are humans, Admiral Morrison. This is our home system. You were warned to stay away for 300 years. You chose not to listen." Morrison felt his world shift. Humans. The species that was supposed to be extinct. The primitive race that had destroyed itself with nuclear weapons. "Impossible," Morrison said. "Humans are dead. Your species destroyed itself centuries ago." "We let you believe that," Captain Richards replied. "It was easier than dealing with the galactic community. We wanted to be left alone." Morrison looked at Dr. Walsh, who was staring at his screens in shock. "Admiral," the scientist whispered, "their ships are using technology I do not understand. The energy readings are incredible." On the screen, one of the human ships moved closer. It was smaller than Morrison's flagship, but it radiated power like a star. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to focus on. "You have 1 hour to leave our space," Captain Richards said. "If you are still here when the deadline passes, we will consider your presence an act of war." Morrison's pride flared up. The Corvan Empire did not retreat from inferior species. "We are conducting a legal investigation," Morrison replied. "The Galactic Council approved this mission. You have no right to threaten us." "The Galactic Council has no authority here," Captain Richards said. "This system belongs to humanity. We make the rules." Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was scared. They had trained to fight other galactic species with similar technology. But these humans were different. Their ships moved like living things, and their technology was far beyond anything the Corvans had. "Admiral," Captain Parker said quietly, "maybe we should consider their offer. We have learned what we came to learn. Humans are alive, and they are more advanced than we expected." Morrison shook his head. "We cannot retreat. The Empire's honor is at stake. If we run from one small defense force, every species in the galaxy will think we are weak." Dr. Walsh looked up from his station. "Admiral, I am detecting more ships, many more. They are coming from all directions." Morrison watched as the tactical display filled with red dots. Dozens of human ships were converging on their position. Some were as large as space stations. Others were so small they barely registered on sensors. 57 minutes remaining," Captain Richards announced. Morrison made his decision. He would not be the admiral who surrendered to a supposedly dead species. "All ships, prepare for battle," Morrison ordered. "We will show these humans the power of the Corvan Empire." Around him, his crew began preparing for what might be their last fight. Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the human ships arrange themselves in perfect formations. Deep in his heart, he began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake, but it was too late to turn back now. The hour passed like a countdown to death. Admiral Morrison watched his tactical displays as more human ships appeared around his small fleet. The Corvans were completely surrounded. When the deadline arrived, only one human ship moved forward. It was smaller than Morrison's flagship, but it approached with the confidence of a predator. "All ships target the approaching vessel," Morrison ordered. "Fire when ready." Lieutenant Stone pressed the firing controls. Energy beams and missiles shot out from all 4 Corvan ships. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon raced toward the lone human vessel. None of it hit. The human ship moved like it knew where every shot would go before the Corvans fired. It twisted through the weapon's fire without effort, never slowing, down or changing course. "Impossible," Dr. Walsh whispered. "No ship can move that fast. The crew should be crushed by the acceleration." The human ship stopped directly in front of Morrison's flagship. It was so close that Morrison could see details on its hull. The metal looked smooth and perfect, like it had been grown instead of built. "This is Captain Amy Foster of the Terran vessel Retribution," a new voice said over the communication system. "You have chosen war over wisdom. We will now demonstrate why that was a mistake." Morrison gripped his chair. "All ships, continue firing. Concentrate all weapons on that single vessel." The 4 Corvan ships unleashed everything they had. Energy cannons, plasma torpedoes, and particle beams all targeted the small human ship. The space around it filled with explosions and deadly light. When the weapons fire stopped, the human ship was still there. It had not moved. It had not even raised shields. The weapons had simply passed through it like it was not there. How? Morrison asked. Phase-shifting technology, Dr. Walsh said, his voice shaking. They can move partially out of normal space. Our weapons cannot touch them. The human ship suddenly became solid again. Captain Foster's voice came over the speakers, calm and cold. Your turn is over. Now it is ours. What happened next would be talked about in Corvin military schools for generations, if any Corvin military schools survived. The Retribution fired once. A beam of blue light reached out from the human ship and touched Morrison's flagship. The Dominator's shields, which could stop the weapons of entire fleets, collapsed instantly. Every system on the ship went dead. The lights went out, the artificial gravity failed, and the engines stopped working. Morrison floated in his command, chair held only by his safety harness. Around him, his crew struggled with controls that no longer responded. All power is gone, Lieutenant Stone reported, his voice barely a whisper. Weapons, shields, engines, everything. We are completely helpless. Captain Foster's voice came through the emergency communication system, which somehow still worked. The Dominator is disabled but not destroyed. We could have vaporized your ship in the first second of combat. Instead, we chose to show mercy. Morrison found his voice. What do you want? We want you to understand, Captain Foster replied. Your ship was disabled by one shot from one of our smallest vessels. The Retribution is what humans call a patrol ship. We have thousands of them. Dr. Walsh managed to get his sensors working on backup power. What he saw made him cry out in fear. Admiral, the other ships, they are all disabled too. Morrison looked at his tactical display. Captain Parker's ship, the Crusher, was drifting without power. The Destroyer and the Explorer were in the same condition. One human ship had defeated 4 Corvin vessels in less than a minute. This is impossible, Morrison said. No species has technology this advanced. Where did you get these weapons? Captain Foster laughed, but there was no humor in it. We made them. We have had 300 years to work without interruption. While you and the other galactic species fought wars and played politics, we built better ships and better weapons. Why? Morrison asked. Why did you hide? Why did you pretend to be dead? Because we knew this day would come, Captain Foster replied. We studied the galaxy through hidden sensors and spy satellites. We watched your wars and your conquests. We saw how you treated weaker species. We decided that when contact finally happened, we would be ready. Morrison felt sick. The Corvin Empire had ruled through strength and fear for 8 centuries. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. He had never thought about what would happen if they met someone stronger. What happens now? Morrison asked. Now you learn the same lesson we taught the galaxy 300 years ago, Captain Foster said. Sometimes it is better to appear weak than to reveal your true strength too early. On Morrison's disabled ship, Dr. Walsh was working frantically to understand the human technology. His backup computer showed readings that made no sense. Admiral, Dr. Walsh said, their ship is not just using unknown technology. It is using impossible technology. According to my sensors, their engines produce more power than a small star. Their weapons channel energy that should not exist, and their hull is made from materials that my computers say cannot be created. Morrison closed his eyes. He had led the greatest fleet in Corvin history into a trap. But it was worse than a trap. It was a demonstration. Captain Foster, Morrison said, I request permission to contact my government. They need to know what has happened. Here. Permission denied, Captain Foster replied. Your government will learn about us soon enough. But not from you. Morrison's blood turned cold. What do you mean? We have been watching your empire for 3 centuries, Admiral Morrison. We know the location of every Corvin world, every military base, every weapons factory. We know your fleet positions, your defensive plans, and your military capabilities. Captain Foster paused, letting the words sink in. While you have been traveling here, other human ships have been traveling to your worlds. By now they have surrounded every important target in your empire. Your entire civilization is under our guns. Morrison stared at the communication panel. You are declaring war on the entire Corvan Empire? No, Captain Foster said. War implies two sides with a chance of victory. This is not a war. This is a correction. Morrison looked around his dark bridge at his floating crew members. These were the best soldiers the Empire had. They had won every battle they had ever fought. And now they were helpless prisoners of a species they thought was extinct. You made a choice, Admiral Morrison, Captain Foster continued. You could have respected our isolation and stayed away. Instead, you chose to invade our space. Now your entire species will pay the price for your curiosity. Morrison tried one last desperate plea. My people are not your enemy. We came here seeking knowledge, not conquest. You came here with 4 warships, Captain Foster replied. That is not how peaceful explorers travel. That is how conquerors travel. The communication went silent. Morrison and his crew floated in their dark ship, prisoners in the heart of the solar system they had thought was empty. Around them, human ships moved through space with deadly purpose, beginning a campaign that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Morrison and his crew remained prisoners in their disabled ships for 6 hours. During that time, they received no word from their home worlds. The communication channels were strangely quiet. Then the reports began to arrive. The first message came from General Bob King, commander of the orbital defense platform above the Corvan homeworld. His voice was filled with panic. All ships, all stations, this is General King. We are under attack by unknown vessels. They appeared without warning and destroyed our entire outer defense fleet in minutes, requesting immediate assistance from any available forces. Morrison listened in horror as more messages followed. Every major Corvan military base was reporting attacks by mysterious ships that struck without warning and disappeared just as quickly. Dr. Walsh had managed to restore partial power to his science station. He was monitoring the emergency channels from across the Empire. Admiral, Dr. Walsh said, his voice shaking. I am receiving distress calls from all 12 homeworlds. The attacks are happening everywhere at the same time. Morrison's mind raced. It was impossible to coordinate attacks across such vast distances. The human ships would have needed to travel for months to reach all the Corvan worlds. Unless, Morrison whispered to himself. Unless what, Admiral? Captain Parker asked. She had managed to reach Morrison's ship using a small shuttle pod. Unless they were already there, Morrison replied. Captain Foster said they had been watching us for 300 years. What if they had ships positioned near our worlds all that time? Dr. Walsh looked up from his station. That would require incredible planning and patience. They would have had to predict our response and position their forces years in advance. Morrison nodded grimly. That is exactly what they did. We thought we were exploring an empty system. But we were walking into a trap that was set centuries ago. A new voice came over the communication system. It was Emperor Thaxmore himself, speaking from the Imperial Palace on the Corvan homeworld. Admiral Morrison, if you can hear this message, you must return immediately. We are under attack by the humans you awakened. Our fleets are being destroyed. Our planets are defenseless. You must bring your ships home and help us fight. Morrison wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out was more like a sob. Your Majesty, my ships are disabled. We cannot help anyone. Captain Foster's voice interrupted the transmission. Emperor Thaxmore, this is Captain Amy Foster of the Terran Defense Force. We are receiving your messages. Admiral Morrison cannot help you because he is our prisoner. But I can offer you a solution to your current problems. The Emperor's voice came back immediately. What do you want, human? Complete and immediate surrender, Captain Foster replied. Order all Corvan military forces to stand down. Recall all fleets to their home ports. Shut down all weapon systems and defensive installations. Never, the Emperor shouted. The Corvan Empire has never surrendered to anyone. Captain Foster's response was calm and final. Then your empire will be destroyed. Over the next 3 hours, Morrison listened as the Corvan Empire died. The reports came in steady streams. The orbital platform above the homeworld was destroyed. The great shipyard at Corva Prime was burning. Admiral Steve Clark's fleet, the second largest in the Empire, was wiped out near the Vega system. Each attack followed the same pattern. Human ships would appear from nowhere, destroy their targets with impossible weapons, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Corvan military, trained to fight enemies with similar technology, had no answer for ships that could phase in and out of normal space. Dr. Walsh tracked the destruction on his restored computers. "Admiral, we have lost 60% of our military forces. The humans are targeting our weapons factories and military bases while avoiding civilian areas." Morrison appreciated that small mercy. The humans could have destroyed entire cities, but they chose to limit their attacks to military targets. It showed a restraint that the Corvan Empire had rarely shown its own enemies. A new message arrived from General Helen Morris, speaking from the attack on the Corvan industrial world of Tertius 7. "This is General Morris of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We have taken control of your weapons manufacturing facilities. Your workers will not be harmed if they follow our instructions. Any attempt to destroy the factories will result in severe consequences." Morrison realized what the humans were doing. They were not just destroying the Corvan military. They were capturing the infrastructure needed to rebuild it. The Empire would not be able to recover from this defeat. Captain Parker sat down next, to Morrison's command chair. "Admiral, we have to face reality. We cannot win this fight. Our technology is centuries behind theirs. Our tactics are useless against enemies who can appear and disappear at will." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the destruction of his empire. "How many people are we going to lose before the Emperor admits defeat?" The answer came sooner than expected. A massive explosion lit up the communication channels. When the static cleared, a human voice was speaking from the Corvan homeworld. "This is Commander Carl Stone of the Terran Liberation Force. We have taken control of the Imperial Palace. Emperor Thax Mor refused to surrender, so we removed him from power. The Corvan Empire is officially dissolved." Morrison closed his eyes. In less than one day, 300 years of Corvan rule had ended. The empire that had conquered dozens of worlds had been destroyed by a species they thought was extinct. Dr. Walsh looked up from his station. "Admiral, I am receiving a general broadcast from Earth. It is being transmitted to every world in the galaxy." Morrison nodded. "Put it on speakers." A new voice filled the bridge. It belonged to Admiral Susan Brooks, commander of the Terran Defense Force. "People of the galaxy, this is Admiral Brooks speaking from Earth. Today, the Corvan Empire attempted to invade our space. We have responded by ending their ability to threaten anyone ever again." Admiral Brooks paused, letting her words reach every corner of the galaxy. "For 3 centuries, we allowed you to believe that humanity was extinct. This deception served our purposes and allowed us to develop our civilization in peace. But the Corvans have forced us to reveal ourselves." Morrison listened as Admiral Brooks explained the new reality to the galaxy. "The age of competing empires is over. Humanity will now take responsibility for maintaining peace and order throughout known space. Any species that chooses cooperation will be welcomed as partners. Any species that chooses conflict will share the fate of the Corvan Empire." The transmission ended. Morrison sat in his dark ship, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he had believed about the galaxy. The humans had not just won a war, they had rewritten the rules of civilization itself. Captain Foster's voice came over the local communication system. "Admiral Morrison, you and your crews will be transported to Earth. You will serve as examples for any other species that might consider challenging human authority." Morrison looked at his loyal crew members. They had followed him into disaster because they trusted his judgment. Now they would all pay the price for his mistake. "Understood," Morrison replied. "We are ready to go." As human transport ships approached to collect the Corvan prisoners, Morrison made a final entry in his personal log. "The Corvan Empire is dead. We killed it ourselves when we chose to enter forbidden space. The humans were content to remain hidden, but we forced them to act. Now they rule the galaxy and we have no one to blame but ourselves." 6 months later, Admiral Morrison stood on an observation deck aboard the massive human ship Sovereign. Through the transparent walls, he could see Earth growing larger as they approached. The planet was nothing like what he had expected. The entire world glowed with the light of billions of cities. Huge structures reached into space, connecting the planet to orbital rings that housed even more people. Ships moved in perfect patterns between Earth and its moon, creating rivers of light in the darkness. Dr. Walsh stood beside Morrison holding a data pad filled with impossible numbers. Admiral, the human population of this system is over 50 billion people. Their industrial capacity exceeds the combined output of the entire former Corvan Empire. Morrison nodded. He had learned much during his time as a prisoner. The humans had been kind to their Corvan captives, providing good food and comfortable quarters. But they had also made sure the aliens understood exactly what they were facing. Captain Amy Foster approached them across the observation deck. Over the past months, she had served as their guide and teacher. Morrison had come to respect her even though she represented everything that had destroyed his empire. "We will be docking at Luna Station in 2 hours," Captain Foster said. "Admiral, Brooks wants to meet with you before your final assignment." Morrison turned away from the view of Earth. "What assignment?" "You will be ambassadors," Captain Foster replied. "You will travel to every world in the galaxy and explain what happened. To the Corvan Empire, your job will be to make sure no other species makes the same mistake." Dr. Walsh looked surprised. "You are not going to execute us?" Captain Foster shook her head. "Dead martyrs inspire rebellion. Living examples teach wisdom. You will be more useful to us alive." Morrison appreciated the logic even if he did not like the role he was being given. "And if we refuse? Then you will spend the rest of your lives in comfortable prisons," Captain Foster said. "The choice is yours." Morrison looked out at Earth again. The planet was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It represented a level of civilization that the Corvan Empire had never achieved. "How?" Morrison asked. "How did you build all of this while remaining hidden?" Captain Foster joined him at the observation window. "We learned from our mistakes. Early in our history, humans fought terrible wars that nearly destroyed our species. We realized that we had to change or die." She pointed to the orbital structures around Earth. "We spent 300 years learning to work together instead of fighting each other. We focused all our energy on science, technology, and building a better society." Dr. Walsh studied his data pad. "But the defensive capabilities, the weapons, you must have spent enormous resources on military development." "We did," Captain Foster admitted. "But we learned that the best defense is to be so strong that no one dares attack you. We built weapons not to conquer others, but to make sure no one could conquer us." Morrison understood now. The humans had achieved something that no other species had managed. They had become powerful enough to protect themselves without becoming aggressive enough to threaten others. "Until we forced your hand," Morrison said. "Captain," Foster nodded. "We would have been happy to remain hidden for another 1,000 years, but you made that impossible. Once one species knew we existed, others would follow. We had to reveal ourselves and establish our authority." The transport ship docked at Luna Station, a massive structure that orbited Earth's moon. As Morrison and his fellow prisoners were escorted through the corridors, they saw wonders that challenged everything they thought they knew about technology. The walls seemed to be made of living light. Gravity flowed in different directions depending on where you walked. Gardens floated in midair, tended by machines that looked like metal birds. They were brought to a conference room where Admiral Susan Brooks was waiting. She was a small human, woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. But Morrison could sense the strength in her. This was the person who had planned the destruction of his empire. "Admiral Morrison," Admiral Brooks said, "please sit down. We have much to discuss." Morrison took a chair across from her. "Admiral Brooks, I want to thank you for the treatment my crew has received. You could have been much harsher." "Admiral," Brooks smiled, "we gain nothing from cruelty. Our goal is not revenge, but stability. We want to create a galaxy where wars like the ones your empire fought are no longer possible. She activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked the former Corvin worlds. Blue dots showed human positions. Green dots represented other alien species. Every intelligent species in the galaxy now knows about humanity, Admiral Brooks said. Most of them have chosen to cooperate with us. A few are still deciding. None have chosen to fight. Morrison studied the display. What happens to the Corvin people? They will be relocated to designated worlds under human supervision, Admiral Brooks replied. They will be allowed to rebuild their society, but they will never again have the ability to threaten others. Dr. Walsh leaned forward. And the other species? What will happen to them? Admiral Brooks touched a control, and the display zoomed in on different regions of the galaxy. Species that choose cooperation will be allowed to govern themselves, under human guidance. We will share some of our technology with them and help them solve their problems. Species that choose isolation will be left alone, as long as they do not threaten others. Morrison saw the genius of the plan. The humans were not trying to rule through fear like the Corvin Empire had. They were offering partnership to those who wanted it, and independence to those who did not. And species that choose conflict? Morrison asked. Admiral Brooks's expression became cold. They will learn the same lesson you did, quickly and completely. She stood up and walked to the observation window. Outside, Morrison could see human ships moving through space. Some were the size of cities. Others were small and fast, like the one that had defeated his entire fleet. Admiral Morrison, you have a choice to make, Admiral Brooks said. You can help us build a peaceful galaxy, or you can spend your remaining years as a curiosity in our museums. Morrison looked at Dr. Walsh and Captain Parker. His loyal officers were waiting for his decision. They had followed him into disaster, but they deserved a chance to find meaning in what remained of their lives. We will serve as your ambassadors, Morrison said. We will tell the galaxy what happened to the Corvin Empire. We will make sure no other species makes our mistake. Admiral Brooks nodded. Good. Your first assignment will be the Andromedan Confederation. They have been making aggressive moves toward their neighbors. Your testimony might convince them to choose a different path. Morrison stood up. He was no longer Admiral Morrison of the Corvin Imperial Fleet. That fleet no longer existed. Now he was simply Morrison, messenger and teacher for the new galactic order. I have one question, Morrison said. What would have happened if we had not entered your space? Admiral Brooks considered the question carefully. We would have remained hidden for a few more centuries. Eventually, some species would have developed technology advanced enough to threaten others. When that happened, we would have revealed ourselves and established order. You simply forced us to act sooner than we planned. Morrison realized the final truth. The Corvin Empire had not been destroyed because they entered human space. They had been destroyed because they represented the old way of thinking. The humans would have ended their aggressive expansion eventually, no matter what choices they made. The Age of Empires was always going to end, Morrison said. Admiral Brooks smiled. Yes, we just decided when and how. As Morrison left the conference room to begin his new life as a human ambassador, he understood that he was witnessing the birth of a new type of civilization. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through strength alone. They had conquered it through wisdom, patience, and the promise of something better. The Corvin Empire had lost everything for daring to enter forbidden space. But perhaps in the end, the galaxy had gained something more valuable than any empire: peace.